Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Real Estate Experience with myself, Sterling White, and we're going to be switching things up today. Instead of just seeing my handsome mug, we've got Gino on this week's episode, where just overall the real estate experience is just getting experience shares from other high achieving and successful investors. So I've got Gino here that is part of Jake and Gino, and he's got just over 1,500 units across would you say it's the Midwest, Gino?
I would say the Southeast. I would say Tennessee, Louisville, Lexington. So we are in, as Jake likes to say, the Southeast Conference.
Okay, perfect. And they've been able to scale up their portfolio. This has been in about 5 to 6 years. So really hit the ground running once they essentially started their company. So along with that is, Jake, Gino, could you give everyone just a brief background on yourself, your life's journey from where you started and kind of how you got to where you are now?
Sure. Sterling, I just want to start off by saying thanks for having me on. I hope I bring a ton of value to the listeners. And I just want everyone to know that, if you choose multifamily, it's possible for anybody because, as Jake likes to say, a pizza guy, who is me, and a drug rep, who is Jake, got together. We had a really big why. We know why we wanted to do it. I was always an entrepreneur at heart. I always wanted to build a business, and I had a restaurant. We bought it back in 1994. Sterling, I don't know if you were born back then, right?
I was 4 years old. 4 years old.
Okay, so you're 4 years old, right? So I actually had the dream. I'm like, wow, I'm living the dream. I went into business with my family. I loved it. This is what I wanted to do. I got out of college. There were no jobs back in 1992. It was a tough economy. So I went into it. And for the first 15 years or so, I loved it. 2008 comes along and there's a big seismic shift in real estate, in business. The internet starts taking over. And, everyone's always out there complaining about those externals. And for me, it was more internal. I wasn't growing as a person. I was stuck. I was doing the same thing every day. I didn't enjoy what I was doing. I have a big family. I've got 6 kids. So you're going to get into the why.
What?
Yeah. So, and I love it. I wish I could have more. I'm getting up there in age, but that was my why. I love the family. And I said to myself, I need to make a little bit more money. What can I do? My big revelation aha moment was every time I dived into personal growth or personal development, I learned something and I shattered my limiting beliefs. I got into life coaching back in 2015 and during my real estate journey, and that became my crystal clear, the clarity of the why real estate, why multifamily. And from there, I just really doubled down on my partnership. I surrounded myself with smarter people, with like-minded people, with Jake and my other partner, Mike, and then ultimately creating the Jake and Gino platform. But it's important for everybody to be out there is, why are you doing something? Why are you going to work? Nothing wrong with a W-2 job. There's nothing wrong with owning a small business. Just be clear on why you're doing it. And then if you're really clear and you love something, and just because something's your passion doesn't mean you need to go out, run and do it. Because Jake likes to say he invented CrossFit. He loves personal growth. He loves working out, but he wanted to do a business with that, and going to the gym and working out with people and training people who didn't want to do that was just soul sucking to him. And it ultimately, he just turned him off from working out. So for me, ultimately my why was creating a business that was self-sustaining, being a role model for my kids, growing that business, and really being able to work whenever I wanted to. And everyone says financial freedom. What is financial freedom to you? It's different for everybody. I thought, leaving New York back in 2017, moving down to Florida, living in Florida and St. Augustine now for the last 2 years, I thought, hey, going to the beach, hanging out, that's great. That's financial freedom. I did it for 2 days. I'm like, this is really boring. It's not for me. So figure out what financial freedom is to you. If that's what you're striving for, it's not really retiring. Retiring is great and all. It's a great concept. But when you retire, it seems like you're done. You're moving on to the next chapter in your life. Real estate can incorporate that. You can incorporate real estate into your life going forward. You can start teaching others to do it. You can start helping others. And that's what's great about real estate. There's so many facets to it.
Yeah, and let me ask you this. I really love how you were touching on the subject of why, because that's something that really helped me get into the industry and get to where I am now, is having that huge why, which is the environment that I was born in was not the best. And I was determined to use that not as a crutch, but as fuel to get out of that ultimately. And then also at the end of the day, that we all only have so much time on this earth. And I feel if someone just has a why of financial freedom, that most of the time, if that's your main why, that may not be enough fuel to ultimately get get you to where you are. So Gino, let me ask you this. With your current business that you have on the syndication side, I know you guys were internally doing your own deals, and then you started the syndication route. My question is, how has a failure, or let's say a setback, ultimately later set you up for success, whether that's in real estate business or...
That's a great question, because I think everybody out there has failures, and it depends. As you get older, you look at those failures or those problems as opportunities, right? When you first fail, when you're first into it, you're so immersed in it, and you're so foggy, and you don't really assess the situation. But when when you take a step back and you're a year out of it, you're like, wow, there's a problem. There was an opportunity from that problem. My first deal back in 2006, I always tell people, a person with money meets a person with experience. The person with experience gets the money, and the person with the money gets the experience. So that was me. Just if everyone stops and thinks about that for a second, that was me back in 2006. I had some extra capital. The business was doing good. I met somebody and he said, let's do a mobile home park deal. Now, I end up going to do that deal. He has the experience. I have the money. Fast forward a year after that, he had my money. I had the experience, lost the deal, and it wasn't his fault. So that's the thing that separates people who are really, truly successful to the ones who aren't successful. From what I heard from your story, you didn't blame your environment, your surroundings for you having problems. I didn't ultimately blame that gentleman who took my money, who was a thief. I blame myself because I wasn't financially savvy enough. I didn't do my due diligence. I still have my brother and my mom who were part of the deal. They're still harping on it 12 years later. That thing is out of sight, out of mind. And it's funny, I did another deal a year later. I bought a strip mall up in New York. Same thing. We overpaid, overfixed. They were amazing learning experiences for me. Were they painful? Yes. No deal is better than a bad deal. That's what I came out of that. And the second thing was, you need to become educated. You pay to play or you seek to serve. It's your choice. You can go out there, you pay and you invest in your education. And that's why I'm a big proponent of coaching. I've spent over $300,000 in the last 18 months on coaching for scaling up my company, for becoming a better speaker, for coaching my students and my staff and learning that. So you either pay on the front end, or you go out and you seek to serve a mentor and give it your all. So it's either with your time or paying for it. So that was a big learning lesson for me, because I really didn't know how to invest. I didn't know what the aspects of a real true investor were. And I wanted to learn. Mobile home parks at the time, I didn't really want to get into them. I hated commercial. I wanted multifamily because I knew people needed a place to live intuitively. And I wanted to do something part-time where I could have a 20-unit complex and still work at the restaurant. Because my goal wasn't to leave the restaurant back then. I didn't think with the limiting beliefs, I can't do that. It's been in my DNA for the last 20 years. How am I going to do that? So I said, multifamily is the way to go. But I went out, I found a couple mentors, did a couple of coaching programs, and it dramatically, and I'm telling you, if I had done that before these deals, I would have saved hundreds of thousands of dollars with spending maybe 10 grand on my education. So it's really worth it. If you really have a big enough why, you'll find that extra money to invest in your education, because once you learn that, it's amazing what you can do with that knowledge. That knowledge is with you forever. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. When I first got started, you mentioned about time, money, and then you're able to get the experiences. I didn't have the capital when I got started, so I used the bartering system with my mentor. I started working for that individual for completely free and was able to obtain that experience in a very short duration of time. And now I still use all of that to this day. And it essentially just allowed me to shortcut and avoid a lot of the pitfalls and failures. I still experienced some, but at the same time, I was able to avoid a lot. So for those of you who don't have the capital, that are just looking to get started, there's always a way. You just have to determine what your problems or essentially weaknesses are, and then find someone to complement those. So with you, Gino, in the last 5 years, what has been one new belief or behavior or habit that you've picked up, or maybe one that you've shedded to get you to where you are now?
That is another good question. As I'm going through this journey, it's funny, when I was in the restaurant, I would always blame my failures. I can't hire the right person. I can't hire, good people. And two things come out of that. We attract what we are, not what we want. So look at yourself internally, look at where you are as an individual. And the second thing is, when you're building a business, there's the three things. I want everyone to write this down, the three things. It's people, it's systems, and it's culture.
Take notes, everyone. That is a golden gem right there.
Yeah, and it took me 47 years to figure that one out. So I'm giving that to you today. And I know a lot of you out there are saying, what the heck does that mean? I can break that down really simply to you. Zig Ziglar says, you build people and then people build the business. And that's what's going on today. Everyone gives millennials a rap for saying, they're not motivated, they're sleeping in their parents' basement. No, they have it right. They are working for a cause. Let's build a cause. And that's what I'm doing at Jake and Gino. I am building a cause. I want to educate people. I want to make people financially free. And I'm doing everything with customer service. And I have our core values and I have our mission statement and I have that all broken down. And when we hire on that. And it's really important to create a culture. And you at the top are leading through that culture. Our mission statement, I always forget it because it's so confusing to say, but it says really creating communities that allow people to become the best version of themselves. And our communities include our property management company. So we have residents. It's the Jake and Gino education company, which is our students. It's the Rand Partners, which is our investors. And it's Rand Capital, which we do mortgages for people. So each one of those entities has their own community and has their own people, whether it's an investor, tenant, or education student. So we really focus on that, and that we're customer service driven, and it's all about people, systems, and culture. At the restaurant, I didn't even have a system on how to train somebody, or when somebody walks into the restaurant, how do you greet them, or how do you answer the phone? These are all things that when you're running a business, step back from it and work, on the business, not just on it, but work on it, not just in it, and document all these systems.
Real quick, I want to mention that is from a great book called E-Myth by Michael Gerber. If you haven't already grabbed that copy, it's on Amazon, or you can go to the library and get it completely free. And that was an eye-opener. I remember the first time I read that book and he said work on your business versus working in your business. It took me later in life to where I am now to really let that marinate and sink in, to really think that just be more comfortable with delegating things and then trusting that person will do it. You want to trust and verify, but at the same time, you want to stay as high level as you possibly can.
And it's really hard for an entrepreneur to do that because let's face it, because when we start out our business, we're doing everything. We can't afford not to. So we take everything on, and it's really about ego. So if somebody can do something 80% as well as you can, you're leveraging not only money, you're leveraging other people's time, and leveraging time will allow you to do other things. Now, with scaling up and with top grading and all these systems that we're implementing to hire people, you want to put the right butts in the right seats. So you want to have the people who are supposed to be doing certain responsibilities in that role. It's a problem with the property management company. It's really hard to be a property manager because it's like having a utility company. Everything's great until something goes wrong in the apartment. Then it's all hell breaks loose and they come in, they're yelling at you. Well, the property manager has to have a certain discipline or a certain personality to know that they're not really yelling at you. They're yelling at their life and their situation. So you have to hire the right property manager and you have to hire them up. You have to train them. You have to give them the proper systems. I'll give you an example. We're working on a system in the property management company. When a tenant comes and we sign up a tenant, normally we don't have interaction with that tenant until not 60 days when the tenant re-signs up. And that's the majority of property management companies. Well, what I want to do with our property management company is day one, they get a welcome basket. Day three, they get a handwritten thank you card delivered to them personally. Day 5 or day 6, they get a video text from the property manager saying, "Hi, Sterling, welcome. We're so happy you're in our apartment. If you need anything, please let us know." So you're setting the table. Those are systems that as we're growing, we're trying to implement them, and you put them in every office. And if you can tell the employees why you're doing this, because they're not tenants, they're residents. It's their home. Put yourself in their situation.
It's a community versus just a property or an apartment.
Yep, and if you can hire and you can train your people to think that way, it's going to make your brand and your culture more important, and your employees aren't just working for money, they're working to be something bigger. So those 3 things were really eye-opening for me. I mean, listen, Sterling, to go from one restaurant and to go to over 1,600 units, there has to be a complete mind shift for me. I mean, like I said, it is definitely partnerships, but it's also being able to grow and wider grow and being strategic about it also.
Yeah. So one question that does come to mind is, because there's always the distinguish, or people don't know whether to third party manage versus building their own and do self-management. I self-manage myself, and it is very hands-on and quite intensive. What was the reasoning between you building your management company versus third party?
Great question. Again, what happened was it was really about circumstances. When we bought our first property, it was a 25-unit property. Everyone says you need to be in the market. And I actually invested in Knoxville, where I didn't have to do any deals with Jake. It was our first deal. I invested from New York into Tennessee. I had the education, I had the ability, I had the underwriting, I had the experience. Jake had the make it happen. He was working as a drug rep, 25-unit property. He said, I'll start managing it. So I said, great. If you do the math, $13,000 a month in revenue, we're paying him a 10% management fee. He's making an additional $1,300 a month to manage the property. Was it worth it for him? Yes. But like you said, Sterling, it was a lot of work. 3 months after the first deal, we buy the second deal. So we're up to about $25,000 a month in revenue. 10% of that, he's making $2,500 a month. So it allowed him to leave his business a lot quicker. And also, he was in the market. He learned how to manage these properties. He had always been a W-2 employee. So he had no real experience with that. So, training people, having 2 resident managers gave him a lot of experience and gave us a lot of confidence that, let's continue to do this. We bought our third property. And then that's where the shift came, where you buy, you have a couple hundred units under your belt. You can start hiring out really qualified property managers, hiring full-time maintenance staff. So that was the transition for us. You don't need to do that. You can get out there and hire qualified third-party property management, but it really depends on what your goals are and what you're looking to do. So for us, it was just pretty much a no-brainer from day one.
Awesome. I agree. In Louisville, Kentucky, bought an 80 unit and third party managed that, and ended up firing the management company 4 months after because they just could not manage the property as we do manage the property. There was some lot of interesting things that were going on, but lesson learned from that, and ended up taking it back in house.
That's awesome. So, there's a couple things you need to look for a third-party property management. You need to make sure that they can handle an 80-unit property. If they've only got duplexes and quads, maybe they're not the type. The second thing is you really need to get out there and see what other assets they're managing and see what they're doing. Maybe call up a couple of the properties, see what systems they have in place, see what kind of property management software they're utilizing, see how responsive they're going to be to you. Check out what other competition is doing in the market. There's a lot of different ways to look at it, but if you manage your own stuff, exactly what's going on. So you can actually say, hey, I like what you're doing, or I don't like it.
Agreed. And so let's go into some tactical things, Gino. So firstly is in today's hot environment, especially in the Southeast corridor, how are you still finding deals in today's market?
Very good question. This is another thing where everyone needs to write down. One of our coaches talks about the 3 pillars of real estate. 3 pillars of real estate. It's market cycle, which we're going to talk about right now. It's exit strategy, and it's debt. You need to have all 3 of those dialed in, because you can't bring me a deal and say, is this a deal? Well, where are you buying it in the market cycle? What kind of debt are you going to put onto it? And what's your exit strategy? Are you going to hold it? You're going to flip it? So in this type of the market cycle, we're probably the seller's phase 2. We're probably getting down, and it's getting towards the end, 7th, 8th inning. I'm a Yankees fan. They lost in extra innings last night, right? So you have to really look at where you're buying. Now, we had spoken off air before, and what did you do? You were really patient, persistent, willing to walk away in the deal that you closed last week. You need to be out there. And I think this is a good time to get into multifamily. People might think I'm crazy, but you don't just get into multifamily and start buying deals. It's like a farmer. You're an entrepreneur. You've got a seed, you've got to plant the seed, you've got to water the seed, you've got to fertilize the seed, you've got to make sure it grows, you've got to pull the weeds, you've got to make sure, please, no hail, no nothing. It's a long game. It's all about commitment. So if you're getting into it now and prices are high, you start networking with brokers. First things you need to do is really focus on a market. What market are you going to be into? Don't be in Louisville. Don't be in Lexington. Don't be in Nashville. Don't be in Knoxville, especially if you're a beginner. Focus on that one market, because whatever you focus on grows, right? Once you have that market locked in, go out there. You're gonna have to visit the market, because brokers are not going to take you seriously. And if you want to be the 1%, this is what you need to do. You need to go out to the market and just go out there and meet brokers and start walking property tours. And they're going to be like, oh, because you know what? Put yourself in their shoes. They get people calling every day saying, I want a multifamily. I want 50 to 100 units, B2C properties in a path of emerging markets. I'm looking for 5 caps. They've heard that. How are you going to make yourself different? Even if you have no deals, Jake and I had no deals. How you do it is you show up when they send you a deal, you underwrite the deal, you let them know whether it does work or it doesn't work. You be very responsive. You don't only just call up and talk about real estate. Try to build a little bit of rapport with them. But getting on property tours is really important at the very beginning. Start underwriting those deals, and it might take you 6 to 12 months before you get a decent deal. That's what happens in this market. And we did the same thing that you did in the deal we closed a couple of months ago. We had found the deal 6 months ago. It didn't work at that price. It was still quote unquote off market. We reach back out to the broker. The broker says, yes, he's willing to sell it. Price was reduced, and just being responsive and being, that patience, like I said, persistence, but willing to walk away if the numbers don't work. And you know what? Stay with that broker, because even though a deal goes under contract, it can still fall out of contract. And a lot of times it does, and makes that mom and pop seller, if he's a mom and pop seller, it makes them motivated, and maybe you're up in the back. And just the last thing is, once you say you're going to do something, do it. If you're going to close on a deal and you give them a fair price, don't go back and ask for seller credits where it isn't warranted, because you don't want to be known as that person who does that. So do what you say what you do, be very responsive, and let them know that you're there.
Yeah, and what he was essentially saying is retrading. That's the worst thing, especially as a broker, or even on the seller's end. But when you're dealing and establishing those relationships with brokers, if you go into deals knowing that you're going to end up retrading, you're known for that. Not only sellers won't want to work with you, but also brokers. And the thing about in this industry, it's very small, I would say, from my experience. So if you have that type of stigma on you, that's just going to stick towards you for.
It might work in certain market cycles when really there's buyers out there and there's sellers out there who can't sell their properties. But the way I look at it is, if I'm a real estate agent, would I want somebody to do that to me? No, that would infuriate me. So I don't want to really do that to somebody else, right? Now, there's legitimate retrades, right? You want to sell credits. If you're doing a walkthrough, you don't see the roof. Then when you do the inspection, there's a hole in the roof and you've got to repair it, or there's plumbing issues, or there's certain other, mechanicals that aren't working, or there's units that are completely down. There are seller credits, or quote unquote, want to use the word retrade. But for the average deal, you don't want to go into that, because that is just a stigma, and brokers don't want to work with you. Don't ever lock down a deal at an inflated price knowing that you're going to go back there and ask for credit. I'd rather walk away from that deal than have that situation occur.
Exactly. And it's always worth, instead of nitpicking, if it's an absolute you have to make the credit, then proceed with that.
Yes.
But if you're just making a credit, sometimes it works, but if you want to get a little some concessions on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so for you guys, how are you attracting investors into your network?
So for us, it was from the very beginning, just giving value. We created Jake and Gino back in 2015. It was just a lot of fun. We just wanted to start a podcast. I tell everyone, this is another thing that everyone else needs to write down. You learn something, you do it, and then you teach it. And that's what Jake and I did. We learned how to do the real estate. We learned how to do multifamily. Then we actually started executing on it. We started buying deals, and then we just started teaching it. We wrote a book back in 2015. We had a couple hundred units, and like everyone else says, well, why would they want to listen to me? For me, it was more of like, when you start teaching something, all of a sudden you start researching it, you start looking at it, you start really diving into it, and what really is a cap rate, what really is a debt coverage ratio, and you become comfortable and you become a better investor. So we just started doing that. We started writing blogs, we started getting involved with Bigger Pockets, and people started seeing us. We had our first event back in 2017. We started attracting more investors. We started growing our investor list, and that's why we didn't syndicate, because you grow investor lists, you need to cultivate them like anything else. I didn't have the time to do that. I was doing Jake and Gino, and Jake was doing the property management. Fast forward about a year and a half ago, we decided, let's start syndicating. We had bought our first 1,000 units in-house. We have about 600 people on an investor list. I can't call 600 investors, but the partner on it, right? Because you get on there, you need a substantive relationship. Just because investors, we go from the mindset of, well, I need to raise money. You need to go from the mindset of, I want to offer these people an opportunity. Let's see if we're a good fit.
Exactly.
And half of our money comes from IRA. The last deal, 50% of it came from IRA money. So what does that tell me? That tells me that people have income that's locked away that they can't deal with. So this is retirement money. Not as many people have liquid assets where they can invest. So know your investor base, know what they need, know that we're looking for 5 to 7 to 9 year holds. So you're not going to get your money back in 36 months. You may be lucky because our first deal, we might do that, but that's what it is. Know that we can give you an 8% preferred rate of return. We have more momentum plays that we're looking at. We're not looking at heavy lifts. So you have to tell your investors what you want. But for us, we brought another partner on. We're leveraging his time and his expertise to call 600 investors. It took him a long time, continuing to put out content, continuing to, do monthly webinars once we close the deals, be as transparent as possible. And we did it also because now we learned syndication. So now we can teach the syndication because we're doing it. So that was one of the main attractions for us.
Yeah, and completely agree. agree with you, what you were mentioning on the providing your criteria or your philosophy to your investors. Because if you have someone who wants to invest alongside you that is looking to get in and get out in 36 months, but you're more of a 7 to 9 year hold period, then that's just asking for a disaster in the long run. And it's always just good. And that's how I structure it, as well as all of our investors. Someone signs up on our platform, and it's due to specific regulations too, that they must have a phone call, and then we're just understanding, what are you looking to achieve? Are you looking to be in it for a long term? What's your general, why would you invest? So just asking those specific qualifying questions. So Gino, I have some rapid fire questions for you to essentially just segue everything. And some of these are going to be a little bit out of the ordinary, but I really want to get your perspective. So the first question here is, what is an unusual habit or an absurd thing that you love?
Well, having a big family nowadays is a pretty unusual habit, right? I mean, I love doing it. And I guess the other habit is just homeschooling our kids. We homeschool our kids. My daughter's a junior in college, all the way down to a 5-year-old. And just being able to spend time. I wrote a book. My last book is our book, The Honeybee, is just coming out in the next couple of weeks. Having all my kids read my book. I mean, I was not a good student, right? But now I'm actually letting them read my book. So I guess that's a pretty unusual habit. I don't think everyone out there does that, but that to me is a crazy unusual habit for me.
So what do they think about reading your book? Are they like, it's just a book from dad?
Well, Sterling, the funny thing is, my wife, hiding in the corner the other day, she was reading for like 3 hours. She just can't come out and say, I really like this book. You know what I'm saying? There's a little competition between the two of us. So, and I think she enjoyed it. And I think the kids really like it. It's a business parable. So it's an easier read. It's more of a multifaceted real estate journey that Jake and I have done from the beginning. And it's written in parable form. So I think that they can enjoy it. It's a good read. It's a quick read, but it gives a lot of principles of where to start. And that's how you teach kids. You teach kids with stories and with games. And you don't make it daunting, and you don't make it seem as if the whole school model is go to school at 7, come home at 3, do 2 hours of homework. I mean, that they work harder than I do and than you do. It's like a full-time job. Education should be fun and should be geared towards what they enjoy and what they excel at. Don't make it seem like work. So that's what I tried to emulate in this book.
Oh, awesome. Love that. And what purchase of $100 or less has most positively impacted your life in the past 6 months?
This is crazy, because thinking about this, and I'm not really a consumer, I try to produce, but $100 or less, believe it or not, time is very important. So I've been doing a lot of traveling in the last 6 months, getting a shuttle to the airport and spending $75 to $100 getting to the airport, that hour and a half time for me where I can actually relax. I don't have to drive. I can do work during that time. Has really thought of, and it seems silly, but really when you use your time more effectively, you can time block and you respect your time more. That's really elevated into the game, because I can do certain tasks. So you're like, it's only an hour, but it's an hour of not being stressed out. It's an hour of listening to an audible and taking notes or preparing for a speech or underwriting a deal. That hour, you'll never get it back. So if I can spend $75 to get driven to the airport safely, and I hate driving, worth it every day of the week.
I completely agree with you, and I love that the concept that you're mentioning, the value of time. And people kind of nudge me on this a little bit, but I outsource my laundry, I outsource my house cleaning of my apartment, and also my grocery shopping. Those are things I absolutely dread, but I take that time, willing to pay to devote those resources to working more and being able to, or even cutting grass.
Wow. Well, you're way ahead of your time, because most people don't understand that concept. If you like it, it's one thing. I like to go shopping with my kids because we love to cook, we love to eat. But if it's something that I don't like and I've got to do it, I mean, that's an hour and a half or 2 hours a week that I really waste my time, but I make it an experience. So find out what you don't like, delegate, dictate, and disappear. That's what you do, right? That's another 3. Delegate, you dictate it, and then you just disappear and you don't do it ever again. And if you really break it down and you see how many hours you're saving per week to do that, if you're saving 5 hours a week, and if you're making $50 an hour, that's $250. And I'm just saying that's really low, $250, but that's $250. I'm sure that you're actually paying a lot less for those services. And it's not even that, it's the creativity, it's the snowball effect. When doing that every week for the next year, for the next 2 years, for the next 3 years, all of a sudden you're going to say to yourself, wow, I got a 150 unit multifamily property under my belt, because for the last 3 years that I've been dedicating 5 hours a week to doing those tasks instead of to doing all the other tasks. It's hard because it's a long game. We're used to the instant gratification. And Sterling, the other thing is it's a dopamine effect. People get dopamine rushes when they get something done. So it's easy to do your laundry. You fold it, task completed, right? But you know how hard it is to write a book? Because the end game, it's a year away. You've got to write a page a day. There's not much that you see getting done, right? But when you're doing your laundry, you're going out shopping, it's a task that's completed. So just trick your brain into saying long game. There's something at the end of the tunnel. And when you can do that, you'll make yourself so much more successful. So kudos to you.
Yeah, agreed. And one last one is, why do you believe we're here on Earth, this planet?
I think everyone out there has different belief systems. I've just been lucky from birth. I had two amazing parents. You know, they were both immigrants. They instilled hard work into me. I got really lucky and married my wife, and she just, you know, she instilled in me, you know, the belief of God, really. We're practicing Catholics, and I think that we have to teach our kids. I think I'm here on this planet to be a really good role model to my kids. I want to teach them that, I'm responsible for their souls. I'm responsible to teach them what's right and what's wrong, teach others. You know, there's always conflicts in life, but I mean, ultimately, we're all trying to get to heaven, I think. And I think that if we can really be good stewards of the earth, be good stewards of our money, and be good stewards of our families, I think that's what's important. And I think if everybody can follow that role model, because I do a lot of life coaching, and I see when things break down, I'm a big proponent of family, because family is so important. And I see kids that don't have good families, or even if they have families, the parents aren't there. They're not there to support them, or they're not there. They're checked out. They're always busy. You need to spend time with your kids, because whatever you do, whatever you say to your kids, the kids will pick up. And it's just important to be a really good role model, because you want the next generation to be great. So you've got to be great for them to be great.
Wow. Gino is dropping true bombs. Hopefully you all were able to take some notes, because I'm just picking up all those golden nuggets right behind him as he drops them. So Gino, how can people get in touch with you?
Really simple. Just go to jakeandgino.com. We have our website up there. We have our podcasts up there. We have our book that's being sold right now. We have the weekly shows, The Wheel of Our Profits. We have 3 other podcasts. We have a multifamily zone podcast that I do with my wife. That's something that is my big why, right? Because I want spouses to work together. I want families to work in the real estate space together. That's important. We have a Movers and Shakers podcast where we highlight our students closing deals, and we have a syndication podcast. And just go to jakeandgino.com. If anybody wants to hit me up, my email address is gino@jakeandgino. I respond to everybody because I love talking real estate. It's really fun. When you find something you like to do, I'm not going to say it's not work, because it's not, sunshine and rainbows, but it's a lot more fun than being in the restaurant peeling shrimp. That's all I got to say. Right?
You do something you love, you never have to work a day in your life.
That's right.
There are still some things that I do even to this day I don't necessarily enjoy doing. Still delegate as much as possible, but still I'm in the field that I really enjoy and love.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, I want to thank you for having me on. I want to thank all the listeners for taking time out of their busy schedule. And like I said, if you want to hit me up for anything, please do.
Awesome. And those of you who are on here, I know you were able to get some good value from this. Go ahead and leave a 5-star review. Thank you so much for being on this episode, Gino. Thanks for listening to The Real Estate Experience. If this has brought you any value, please subscribe and leave a 5-star rating. It would mean the world to me. Now go out there and crush it.